Welcome to Poland Daily. Today we'll speak about China with distinguished guest Benedict Rogers, the author of the book China Nexus. In Polish, it's Chińska sieć zła, and that's the copy. So welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Well, only recently we saw a kind of upheaval of the activity on the Western side, like the visit of President Marcos and Prime Minister Kishida in Washington, D.C., stressing the unity of the Western nation, Philippines and Japan as a part of the Western Alliance. We see the awareness of the problem in European Union. So what can we do together to stop this worrisome the development of CCP, and next to turn China into sort of right way, the way we want it to be?
I think you're absolutely right that the West is starting to wake up. I think the speed is at different levels. I think the US is much more awake perhaps than some parts of the European Union. The UK is somewhere in between. I think the first thing we all need to do is to recognize this as a major challenge to our freedom, our values, our security, and our economy. The British Prime Minister uses the phrase an epoch-defining challenge about China. I would rather he simply say China is a grave threat. That would be much clearer language. So I think recognizing it and then doing as much as possible together as democracies, the European Union, the UK, Canada, the US, but also with some of our Asian allies like Japan, coordinating actions more together. Because I think when countries act on their own, it's easier for China to retaliate. But if coalitions are formed to act together, it's much harder for China to retaliate, and the impact on China is much stronger.
What was the impact of COVID-19 in China? Like in Europe, we learned that we cannot rely on the Chinese providers of many goods and services and basic materials. Well, how this reflected on China?
I think it's certainly, I mean, it was ironic that China gave us COVID-19 and then we were reliant on them for all the things we needed to cope with COVID-19. But I think people are waking up to that dependency. But one of the particular impacts in China itself, I think, is that it has sown the seeds of discontent with the Chinese Communist Party. We saw the white paper movement at the end of 2022. And I now meet more Chinese exiles in the UK and elsewhere outside China who are much more willing to be critical of the regime than they were before. So I think COVID helped to wake up people in China to the lies and the untrustworthiness of this regime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So China or Chinese had this concept of the grace of the heaven that goes to the emperor and it can be taken away. Is it this situation that the grace of the heaven is no longer with Communist Party?
I think it is possible. I think the combination of the legacy of COVID-19 and also the economic downturn, particularly the very, very high youth unemployment in China, I think the grace of heaven, or the mandate of heaven as it's sometimes called, may well slip away at some point. That said, the Chinese Communist Party has been very successful over the last 70 or more years at reinventing itself and holding on to power. So I'm not saying it's going to collapse tomorrow or that its disappearance can be guaranteed, but definitely I think it's because of the economic decline. I think the unspoken agreement that existed between the Communist Party and the people of China has been weakened because the economic miracle that was promised is no longer there.